Hi, and welcome to Dear Jaime, the video series where I answer your most pressing questions about higher ed marketing and enrollment. My question today comes from Molly, and she asks, how do you move your team from order takers to strategists? And this is a really common question because in a lot of cases, higher ed departments are seen almost more like a Kinko's than they're seen as strategic partners. So there's a couple things that you can do to reframe that. The very first thing I always recommend is take a look at your intake process. If you have a form that asks, what do you need? You're going to get tasks. But if it asks, what audience are we trying to reach? What problem are we solving? What does successful look like? What is your ultimate goal? That really forces strategy. And I actually changed the form when I was at Winston-Salem State. So it was literally just, what is your goal? And then your name, your email address, and your budget. And people felt sort of weird about that because they were used to being able to check off a list of tactics, but it wasn't really up to them what tactics we used. We really need to apply our marketing expertise and their subject matter expertise to come up with a plan that's actually strategic and isn't just checking off a menu of tactics. Another thing is how we talk about the people that we work with on campus. If we call them clients, they feel like they have a client relationship. And in a client relationship, you typically have the power as the client to dictate what happens. But if you have a partner relationship, then you're working together to solve the strategic problems of the institution and you're working together to achieve the goals. Whenever I started a new role as a vice president or chief marketing officer, I would have the team immediately change that language because language matters, semantics matter, and it really reframes the relationship. I also think it's important to change how success is measured. So if your performance reviews are based on speed or volume or consumer happiness, that's when you get order taking. But if you're rewarding the clarity of objectives and the accomplishment of achieving the goals in a measurable way, or the quality of the strategic framing, that's when you start to see that things move away from order taking to something a lot more strategic. And then my last bit of advice is to build strategic muscle in public. So when your team is presenting how we're going to solve the challenge that has been brought to us, present the problem statement before you present the tactics. You want to share audience insights, you want to defend your channel choices, and you want to report on outcomes that are tied to those goals. You want to normalize the idea of thinking out loud so that people can see the strategic value of the work that you're doing. My second question comes from someone we're going to call John, and you'll see why. His question was, how do you push back on senior leadership diplomatically? And I really appreciate that you actually felt brave enough to ask this question. I think it's really important to be direct, be calm, and anchor your request or your pushback into shared goals. So you have to start with alignment. So you want to start off by signaling that you're on the same side with something like, I completely agree that the goal is increasing yield, or we both want this launch to land strongly. You want to lower that defensiveness. And then ask any clarifying questions that you have first. So often what you're reacting to is the tactic and not the objective. So you can say, can you share what outcome you're hoping this will drive? What concern is this addressing? Sometimes just asking that question makes it clear why this person is pushing in that direction. The next really important piece is moving away from presenting an opinion to presenting a consequence. So instead of, I don't think that's a good idea, say, my concern is if we broaden our audience on this, we risk weakening the message for the primary audience. Or my concern is this might dilute our positioning that we've been building. And another really important piece, the thing that you cannot forget, is you need to offer an alternative. Don't just say no. Say something like, what if we test this with a smaller segment first? Or another option would be, or if the goal is visibility, here's a way we can approach it without shifting our strategy. And finally, use data when it's available. Senior leaders typically respect evidence. So if you can bring data to the conversation by saying, the last time we did this campaign, we saw a 40% drop in engagement. Things like that can help sway a senior leader. At the end of the day, you also have to understand when to yield. Diplomacy includes having the judgment to know when you can't push further. So ask yourself, is this hill worth dying on? Is this risk strategic or is it cosmetic? And save your capital for those decisions and those pushbacks that truly matter. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a question, you can email me at jamie@solvehighered.com. That's JAIME at solvehighered. Or you can find me on LinkedIn at Jamie Hunt, JAIMEHUNT. I'm always happy to answer your questions, and I look forward to seeing them.